Welcome back to the DJ Sessions, where we feature the best DJs, producers, and music industry professionals from around the world. I'm your host, Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington. On the other end of the Zoom, we got Alan Cross coming all the way in from Oakville, Ontario. Alan, how's it going today?
Very good. I'm just outside of Toronto. You're hearing my studio phone ring in the background. Please ignore it. It is a junk phone call from some stupid telemarketer.
You know, I have a secondary office line as well, and it does stay on mute and doesn't vibrate. Sometimes I got to remember to pick it up, though, because those business calls do come through. But it got, when you register a business, they ask you to put your phone number on there, and it gets put out there, and the telemarketing companies grab the numbers and put them in their databases. And
it's probably somebody speaking in Mandarin saying that I have a package to pick up at DHL. That's usually what it is.
Or I like the one that you want a Hilton Rewards card membership.
Oh, yeah, I get that one. I also get, do I want my furnace ducts cleaned?
Furnace ducts cleaned?
Oh, you don't get those?
I'm not in that target age range.
Oh, it's usually some guy with a South Asian accent named Bruce who is asking me if I want my ducts cleaned, and the answer is no.
Yeah, I've been toying with one of my other companies to start hiring a telemarketing company to do things, but I think I might keep it North American-based side for calling North American-based clients. But that being said, telemarketing aside, it looks like you got your start around the age of 6. And that kind of number is interesting because that's when I got my start, although we're not the same age. But it sounds like 6 is a magical number. It's when you got your first radio.
Yeah, I think there's something about age 6, the age that you start school. So grade 1. And you are all of a sudden a big boy or a big girl. And you start exploring the world a little bit more. And for my 6th birthday, my grandmother gave me my first ever transistor radio. I've since long lost it, but I remember that it was a Lloyd's transistor radio run by a 9-volt battery. Up until that point, the only radio that I ever got to hear was what Mom and Dad played. That was coming from the radio on the kitchen counter or whatever they played in the car. When I got my own little radio, I realized that there was more than one radio station because, the family listened to the Mom and Dad's station. And I was growing up in a town just outside of Winnipeg, middle of the continent, the middle of nowhere. And all of a sudden, the entire world was opened up to me. At that point, we had 3 TV stations. One of them was in French, and I only heard Mom and Dad's radio station. But then all of a sudden, everything became manifest. And nearby Winnipeg at that time had 3 top 40 radio stations. Plus, if you grew up on the Canadian prairies in the wintertime, you enjoy what's called Ionospheric Skip, which means that the layer of the atmosphere gets very, very thick at night when it's cold, especially in the wintertime. And it acts as a gigantic mirror for AM radio stations coming from all over the place. So I would sit in bed at night tuning this little tiny tuner, picking up stations from Minneapolis and Denver and Chicago and where else? Minneapolis and Cincinnati and Cleveland. And it's like, wow, this is a big world. Where are all these voices coming from? What's all this information? What's all this news? What's all this entertainment? I think I'd kind of like to be one of these people. And that's really where it started.
That was, like I said, the magical age of 6. You're right. It kind of is like you're a big boy. You're going to school. Well, that's when we got our first video camera in 1979. And I was not allowed to play with it because it was $1,000 video camera. And I was allowed to hook up the VCR and put VHS tapes in the VCR and hook up the stereo, but the video camera was off limits.
Right.
And my brothers were musicians, and I kind of gravitated and wanted to play with the video camera. So when my dad was out of the house, I'd hook up the video camera and kind of make home movies, and you could watch them right away. You didn't obviously have to go process film or anything because it's right there to the VHS tape. But it kind of started off my whole thing with the VCR and the video camera, having those two and being able to watch movies over and over and over and over again, as opposed to having to wait for it to be on HBO or late night TV. Kind of got me sucked into the film and television industry at a very early age.
Yeah, and then another thing happened. My uncle, who was working for the telephone system, had a side hustle where he serviced jukeboxes. And he would go around once a week. He had a route. And he would swap out the old records for the new records. And when the old records came out, they were so badly worn that they weren't worth anything. So one day we went over to his house to pick up a puppy, as a matter of fact, and he also dumped this box. And I remember there were 34 7-inch singles in there, and he said, "You want these records?" And I go, "Okay." And there was a lot of junk in there, but I remember there was about 20 or 22 that I liked, I recognized from the radio, and that became the basis of my record collection. And I think I'm 10 or 11 around that time, and I still have all those 45s.
Oh, do you remember the first record that you ever bought? Is it worth mentioning, or
with my own money?
With your own money?
Yeah, I do. It was Elton John's Greatest Hits Volume 1. It was $4.99. I bought it at the general store in the town where I was growing up. I bought it with money I earned from my paper route, and with tax and everything, I would think it was $5.69, somewhere around there. I brought it home, and my mother was furious that I would waste my money on something as trivial. Where do you think that's going to take you? Where do you think that fits in your life? You should be saving this money for the future. For what, Mom? Why don't you just save your money for the future? I remind her of this every once in a while, but I think my parents are still very concerned after all these years that I'm just living on the edge, and it's just going to be a matter of time before I end up back in my basement bedroom. I'm going to go visit them this weekend. Dad's 88, Mom's 86, but they're still positive that I'm moving home.
And so this kind of launched you into a career later on. Was it college when you first stared at the AM radio, or
there's a bunch of stuff in between?
Yeah, what happened to Gabe?
It's so I when going to school, small town. I wasn't very good at sports, especially hockey. If you're not good at hockey where I grew up, well, it's like not being good at football or baseball or basketball. You're just shunned. I was nowhere near a jock. Complicating things is that I was pretty good in school. I mean, I was, top 1, 2, 3 every grade, right? And that made me highly unpopular with a lot of people. And I found that by the time I got to high school, the thing that I could do that made me kind of cool, that made me kind of acceptable with beautiful people, was to know something about music. So I was the guy that, because I had a job, I had money to go out and buy records. I was a little bit more plugged into what was happening in the, when it comes to record stores and what was on the radio. And then by the time I get to be 15 or so, I'm going to concerts. So the idea of being the music nerd was something that actually elevated my social status to from being a complete troll to becoming, semi-respectable amongst these people. So that really got things going. By the time I get to university, I'm thinking, okay, I want to be in broadcasting, but I want to be I don't want to be a long-haired, dope-smoking DJ. I mean, that's just stupid. My parents would never like that. They would never never deal with that. So I was going to be a newscaster, a journalist, an anchor, a foreign correspondent, something along those lines. So I went to university and took all the requisite courses that I thought I'd need, like political science and history and sociology and languages and that sort of thing. And while I was doing that, I had a shift, a once-a-week shift, 8:30 to 9:30, Friday mornings on the campus radio station. And that's where I first opened the mic. That's where I first learned to cue up a record. Basically getting started. I mean, it was. Let me tell you something. Other than playing records for yourself in your room, this is about as bare bones as bottom of the food chain you can possibly get, because this was a closed circuit radio station. It only broadcast to one hallway and one cafeteria. And from 8:30 to 9:30 on a Friday, you can just imagine how many people were actually listening, were even in the school at that time. But I did this long enough that it gave me a semblance of respectability and experience. At the same time, I was working in a grocery store, and every Friday at 5:15, this guy would come in to buy milk. And that just so happened to be the time when I was filling the dairy case. His name was Dennis Cloutier, and I learned later that he was opening up his own radio station about 15 miles away from my small town, in the small town next door. And once I found that out, I started hassling him. I want to work with you. I want to get into this business. And eventually he just gave up and just told me one day that I had to show up for a staff meeting and that I was going to be part of the weekend staff. Well, you just imagine how excited I was there. I should point out, though, that this was a genuine elevator music station. It was in the middle of a wheat field, right at the transmitter site, 5,000 watts FM, and it played beautiful music. So for every 2 instrumentals that you played, you got to play 1 vocal. And it was the sleepiest, most boring, most god-awful radio station on every level that you can possibly imagine. But I worked there for 18 months, and it was a real-life radio station. We were broadcasting to the world. Nobody was listening. And the place actually went bankrupt. It really did go bankrupt. Because the guy had worked for public radio, had no idea how to program, how to run, how to sell a commercial radio station. But that was enough to get me through university. And from there, I moved to my first full-time job, which was at an AM radio station in northwestern Ontario, which, again, middle of nowhere, 1,000 watts, broadcasting to a town of about 12,000 people, and a bunch of bears. I mean, really, it was in the middle of, again, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was in like, we call it cottage country. So it's where you had the people working at the paper mill, you had some Indian reservations, you had some commercial fishermen, and you had bears, and cottagers in the summer.
So here's a question though. And I should know this, but I was never in broadcast radio in any way, shape, or form. Is a 5,000 watt AM station more powerful than a 1,000 watt FM station, or what's the distance? What's the range?
Okay, so the FM station, a 5,000 watt FM station, it depends on how tall your tower is.
Okay.
So 5,000 watts it was probably 300 feet, maybe, and that would give you a range of about, I would be surprised if it was more than 75 miles.
Okay.
Really. If you had a 100,000 watt station at 1,500 feet, well, that's about 100 miles. Okay. If you have a 1,000 watt AM station, the coverage there, I would guess not much more than 45 miles. Okay. Because we were in the area of Canada known as the Canadian Shield, so it's solid granite. I mean, it's just, and there was nobody there. So it was. You were 30 miles out of town. This signal was already scratchy and awful.
Okay.
So I was there I was told by the guy who hired me that the news director, remember I'm going to be a news person, was going to quit in 3 months. He says, okay, but what I want you to do is just do a regular DJ thing, play records on the radio. Just that's what I want you to do. Okay. So I did that for 2.5 months, and you know what? That news guy quit. And just before Labor Day, 1983, the guy says, okay, come Tuesday, you're in the newsroom. Fantastic. Career objective achieved. It took, I think, about 2 hours for me to realize that this was not what I wanted to do. I hated it. And I was just, you have no idea how disillusioned and awful and depressed I felt, because this just wasn't working out for me. So I thought, okay, well, I've ruined my life. I don't know where I'm going to go with this, but this isn't going to be it. But fortunately, 20-some days after I got this job, I got a call from a pretty cool FM rock station about 200 miles away that said that they were looking for somebody, and would I like the job? And the answer was, yeah. So I left town so quickly that my landlord actually sent the sheriff after me for non-payment of rent. And at this FM radio station, which was 100,000 watts at 1,300 feet, had a huge footprint, but from a small town, and it was way cooler that it had a right to be in that part of the world. And that's, I've been playing records and on the radio ever since.
And I mean, you've done kind of a number of things, and one of the things you did in 1993, you started a show called The Ongoing History of New Music. And tell us a little bit about that show and how that came about and what that means and where it's at now.
All right. So this is where Seattle comes into play. By this time, I was working for a radio station in Toronto called CFNY. And CFNY was one of the premier commercial alternative rock stations in North America. There was K-Rock in LA, there was us, there was WFNX in Boston, there was WHFS in Washington, there was K-Rock in New York, and a few others. And the station had gone through a pretty dismal time with management changes and ownership changes and a bunch of things like that. So finally we got some stable ownership in and some stable management in. And for a while they thought that they were going to change the station to a country. It was going to be a country station. But then they started looking around and realized that there were these bands like Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Soundgarden and Nirvana. And they thought, oh, this seems to be working out well. So this is 1992, okay? So the whole grunge thing has just blown up, and then all the record labels are signing anything that was remotely alternative, Smashing Pumpkins, Stone Temple Pilots, on and on and on. And they thought, well, maybe there is a market for this sort of thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep with this format. We're going to refine it a little bit, and we're going to have to do a better job of educating all these new listeners that we're hoping to get by telling them exactly where this music came from. So they looked around the staff, and they found exactly one person with a history degree and who had some writing experience, and they said, you. Now, at this time, I was working Monday to Friday from 2 until 6 in the afternoon. Greatest shift in the world. I mean, I roll into work around 11, do my thing. I'm home by 6:45. I mean, talk about it, Monday to Friday. It doesn't get any better, right? I said, I didn't want to do this. And they said, well, okay, that's fine. We'll find somebody else. But meanwhile, we'll put together a nice severance package for you. Best of luck in your future endeavors. Oh, well, since you put it that way. I had just gotten married. I just built a house. I was a straight radio person, didn't have a whole lot of portable skills, so I had no choice to take it. Now, what they did was they actually severed me from being full-time, hired me on part-time to work Saturday and Sunday mornings from 6 a.m. to noon. And then 3 days a week I would do this program, which they called The Ongoing History of New Music. Now, it's not my title. It's a terrible, terrible title. Nobody ever gets it right. But that was my option. And the only thing I could do was make some lemonade out of these lemons. It was a rough go that first year because I didn't know what I was doing. There was no internet back then, so there was no, books written about alternative music. It was so new that unless you were there, unless you could talk to somebody, unless you, got the, press release from the record labels or went through the music magazines, there was nothing to work from. In fact, I did not have a common day off with my wife. So that was awkward. Plus, because I now had to become an incorporated company, I had to take care of all my own bookkeeping, all my own accounting, it was terrible. But at the end of about 9 or 10 months, they had a change of heart and said, okay, the person that we put in afternoons, it's not working. We'll put you back there. And you'll do that, and you'll do this radio program. So, okay. And that's the way it was from 1990, late 93 through until 2001.
And seeing the shift of computers, technology coming up, moving forward just a little bit, podcasting, how did that change the landscape? Or did you see it change the landscape because podcasting for us, we got into it around 2005.
Right.
And it was all audio, and we're video people. We looked at YouTube as not really a medium that we wanted to be on. We were broadcast television, or at least I had started in public access TV and then moved into broadcast television. And so how has the landscape changed, or has it changed that much from a radio standpoint, when you look at podcasting, where it's gone to as
Yeah.
technology's advanced?
I first became aware of podcasting in the early 2000s. I want to say 2002, 2003. This would be, it was tech podcasts because, the techies first got into it. And so I'd be listening to one or two tech podcasts that were available, but I'd be listening to them on my computer because, of course, by that, we did not have smartphones at that time. And then I remember hearing more about it as we get to 2004, 2005. By this time, I'm a program director at a radio station. I'm saying, you know what, this is the next frontier. This is on-demand audio, something that radio or television doesn't really offer, this kind of, personalized on-demand media. But at that time, everything was just fine. The big problem, of course, was file sharing and illegal downloading. And anybody that I talked to in the radio business said, well, no, what you're going to do is you're simply going to cannibalize the radio business. We don't want to do this. We want people listening to the radio. We don't want people listening to podcasts. But as time went on and podcasting became a bigger and bigger thing, especially when, Apple really jumped into the game and everybody had a smartphone, had an iPhone with a podcast app. And it took a while before people started to understand that this was a business that could be, monetized. When YouTube first showed up, for example, everybody thought that this was nothing more than a giant, copyright infringement, hellhole. But after Google bought it, it's I remember Google bought YouTube for $3.1 billion, and everybody's thinking, oh, they just threw away their money. It's going to be worth absolutely nothing. Well, that didn't really turn out that way, did it? So by the time we get to 2009, 2010, 2011, podcasting is really starting to build. Although there is this big, in terms of the mainstream media groups, there's still a big, we don't really understand it. We don't see anybody making any money from it. But I was always thinking, because by this time I'm into like 5 or 6 different podcasts a week. It took until 2017 before the powers that be at the company that I was working at to say, okay, well, let's turn Ongoing History into a podcast. What we'll do is we'll take the radio show, we'll edit out all the music and all the things that are going to get us in trouble for copyright infringement, and we'll put it up and see what happens. Well, some 20 million downloads later, I think we're doing okay.
And, when you mention the music licensing, you understand it because you're on this side of the fence. And it still blows me away to this day that a lot of people that go onto these online platforms, even using things like Facebook or, Twitch or YouTube, they aren't reading the terms and conditions.
I know.
Or they aren't understanding the legal ramifications of the industry they're getting into. And, it's not something you just commonly teach in school. Like, hey, take that copyright course and learn about music. You learn about master and sync licensing and why it's not Facebook's problem, why it's not Amazon's problem or Google's problem to pay out all the royalties on this music, because that's not how the law works. And do you see anything in the future with the DMCA changing to help independent artists get access to use the commercial music without having to spend so much money or go through all the hoops?
Yeah, it's way beyond the DMCA because it's an international problem. People who say that, for example, that, what do you mean you can't put music in your podcast? Why not? Well, I'll tell you why not. That's copyrighted material. An artist has a contract with a record label that says that the record label is the exclusive distributor of this artistic work. If anybody else does it, then that person is violating a contract when it comes to distribution. And there is no place, first of all, let's get this very clear. When it comes to podcasts, by the letter of the law, everywhere on the planet, you cannot use as much as 1 nanosecond legally of a piece of recorded music. You can't. There's no such thing as fair use. This is all just smoke and mirrors. You cannot. And if you want to, there is no place in the known universe where you can go and license a song legally for use in distribution in podcasts. It does not exist. Now, there are workarounds. YouTube, Spotify has something called Anchor. But in terms of just like a free-flowing standalone podcast with music embedded, you can't. Now, that being said, somewhere around 20-25% of all podcasts out there are music-based. And yes, there's a tremendous amount of money being left on the table because, podcasters should be paying for the use of this material. So what we're kind of doing is, in my show, is that we edit all the music down to like 20-25 seconds, below 30 seconds. So rarely an algorithm, actually, an algorithm has never picked it up. And record labels and publishers and other rights holders aren't, too fussed about having 20 or 30 seconds of a song in a podcast if it is, of course, promoting that, especially if it's promoting that song and that artist. So that's not a problem. And if people ask, well, why isn't there a way to clear music for podcasts? And the answer is really complicated. And I have done more research than most into this and talked to more people around the world about this. And it is such a big, technically, it is a giant, almost insurmountable problem, because what you have to be able to do is track the songs. And nobody has come up with a way of tracking songs in podcasts yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And then if you're following on this, sounds like you are on top of this. What they just did in the EU, where they removed the safe harbor away, and that's all. Now they're finally getting it implemented in the EU, and I'm wondering what effects that's going to have moving forward worldwide, and are other countries going to start following suit?
Well, see, that the EU is an interesting case because they like to regulate a lot of things. Just ask Google, just ask Apple, just ask Facebook and Amazon. The fines that they've had to pay for various things. I don't know. The closest best thing that we have right now is something called an IRC number, ISRC number, which is an international standard recording something that identifies a song by a long number. Mm-hmm. But again, you can have this giant database of songs and the numbers that go along with them, but unless you can track those songs, unless you get metadata sorted out, which is another giant problem, it's going to be a while yet.
I know the companies. I know that YouTube has Content ID, which they're not sharing with anyone.
Yeah, they don't want to share that. Spotify doesn't want to share their algorithmic identification. Facebook's got something, we don't know what. And then there's TikTok, and then there's Instagram, and then there's Twitch. I mean, all these different platforms are using music to some degree, and they all have their own way of identifying songs, and they've all got platform exclusive agreements with all these different performing rights organizations, publishers, and labels. And there is no central podcasting body, right? There's nowhere on the planet is like we are the kings of, or we are the lobbyists even for podcasting. Yeah. And we would like to make it better for all podcasters, because podcasting is completely the Wild West. There is no international organization that speaks for podcasters anywhere, whether it be audio or video. So, it's a mess. So let's just say that if you are running a podcast right now and you're putting full songs in that podcast, you might want to reconsider.
That's one of the things in 2020 when we stepped back, everyone had jumped online and started live streaming, and we're using all the mediums, and they're getting taken down. They're getting flagged for copyright infringement. And my phone is blowing up off the hook saying, how do you do it? How do you do it? I'm like, I'm not giving out our secrets.
Yeah.
It's just, I used to give away a lot of information freely to people. And I looked at it from a business standpoint. I said, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years. This is part of my business model. I just don't give you here's the golden playbook for free.
Yeah. Sorry. You're what? I'm going to empower my competition. No, you figure it out.
Exactly. You go figure it out. And no, I'm not going to do that. But coming into the advent of podcasting and the change of technology, social media has also become a huge component to a lot of artists. And it's kind of like it's in your repertoire, it's in your arsenal, it's in your playbook now. How did you adapt to bringing social media into your brand, into your workings.
Right. So
was that painful or was it easy?
So it was a little bit different for me because when Facebook and Google and YouTube started, I was the program director at The Edge, a very powerful radio station. And we had a promotions department. And the promotions department was all young kids, right? So they're always into the hot new thing. And they discovered Facebook first and thought that, well, this might be a way to communicate directly with our listeners. So at that point, I got into Facebook pretty early. So this is 2005, 2006.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So also started to get into YouTube. I realized, especially after it was purchased by Google, oh, okay, well, you know what we can do? There's this ability that we have. And remember, radio stations have only had websites, since 97, 98, really. So now with embeddable videos on YouTube, it's like, wait a second. Our radio station can now be accompanied by video. Radio can have video. We can embed this stuff on our site. We don't have to worry. Again, bandwidth was hugely expensive back then because I would get a statement at the end of the month saying the radio station spent this much on bandwidth, and it would be this huge amount of money. And you ran into a problem. The more popular you got, the more you paid for bandwidth, and the more my boss would come down on me. I'd say, "Hey, look how popular we are," and they go, "Yeah, but look how much it's costing us." So. But we eventually, got into this, and with YouTube, they took care of all the bandwidth, they took care of all the hosting, and I think back then the maximum, when we first got into it, I think the maximum length of a clip was 5 minutes, and then went to 10, and that was like a big deal, like wow, 10 minutes of video that we can get. Then I discovered Twitter, and I was starting to push on my staff, the use of Twitter. And then somewhere around that time, there was also MySpace, and MySpace was, of course, this really interesting place for bands, for musicians. It looked awful, but if chances are, if you were interested in a band, they had a MySpace, or their fans had a MySpace page, and I think this predates Wikipedia, and it certainly predates official websites that were being posted, that were being created by artists and labels and so on. So that's how I got into it. I got into it from a business side of view. It wasn't something that I found out. It's like, and then once it caught on, it was like, okay, we got to get deeper into this. So after, I guess Facebook was first, then YouTube was second, and then Twitter was third, and then Canada was late to the streaming game. We didn't get Spotify until 2011. It wasn't legal here until 2011. But then we got into streaming, and then, from there on in, it just kind of exploded. By the time we get to 2012, 2013, social media is a thing. And if you didn't know how to use it, especially streaming RDO, for example. I mean, I was a big fan of RDO before they just collapsed upon themselves.
RDO. Don't remember that one.
So they were an early Spotify competitor.
Okay.
And they were based out of San Francisco, and I liked their user interface a lot. It was really good. I did a little bit of business with them. And then one weekend, they just collapsed. The owner said, "Yeah, fine, we'll sell out," and they did. That was it.
Is Pandora still around?
Pandora's still around. It's Pandora's only available in select countries: the United States, Australia, and the UK.
Oh, okay.
We had it here for a while, but then they ran into some licensing issues and decided to geofence it. So we still don't have Pandora.
Geofencing, that's one that most people don't hear too much about.
Well, no. If you don't know what it is, it means that you stop your stream from going into over certain international borders. I'll give you an example. It's very difficult without a VPN for a Canadian to listen to American radio stations streaming online, and vice versa. And that's because there's an organization called CSAC, which is a performing rights organization that is supposed to collect royalties for anything that's played. What CSAC wanted was Canada to pay CSAC royalties in the U.S. for the privilege of broadcasting over the border. And we said, and the Americans said the same thing with our performing rights organization, which is called SOCAN. It's like, no, why would we pay for the privilege of broadcasting to people who are not going to buy the products that advertise on our streams. So we'll geofence it, and that means that we can't hear you, you can't hear us.
And you bring up that fact about buying products. Like, I have a podcast series. I advertise local businesses. I work with some international names like Mackie as well. But when you go to sell it and you're a starting up podcaster, and you're like, hey, local place down the street, we might be getting 10,000 people listening each time we put a podcast, or 50,000 people listening. But the pizza owner shop down the street says, what is that? Is that going to bring any business to me if they're in India?
Yeah, they don't care.
Hey, they don't care. So you find this disparity, and then you don't have big enough numbers to get the international sponsors, but you have numbers, and that whole, how do I monetize this podcast? How do I monetize this
and then you get into things like dynamic ad insertion, and then you need to have a distribution platform like Acast, and it starts to get pretty weird pretty quickly and very complicated, especially if you don't understand the business aspect. What are your impressions? What are your clicks? What's your CPM? And it's like, what? I just want to do a podcast. Yeah.
So speaking about technology and the future of music, have you looked into anything in virtual reality, or are you exploring that? Or
I have, but my problem is that I also read the books Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. And both of those books scared the crap out of me because, I'm having a hard enough time dealing with this reality, let alone for one to be created that where the rules are, let's just say, fungible. So it's coming. It's definitely coming. Apple apparently last week demonstrated their headset with apparently 14 different cameras in the headset to their board of directors. So I would not be surprised come October we finally see the Apple AR VR headset. And I've seen a few early demos of what Apple believes the metaverse should be. And it's cool. It's really cool. But just like anything, humans will find a way to abuse it. So,
that's I think a lot of people are anticipating what's going to come out later this year with Quest 3 or whatever Meta is going to rebrand it, because it's supposed to possibly be a VR and AR or a MR headset, mixed reality headset. But we know that Apple's developing, Google's developing, Microsoft's developing, Sony's developing.
Oh, it's just a matter of time.
And who's also the bigger headsets are coming out. Our take on it, we're going to see kind of what you and I have seen with the rise of the Atari or the rise of the Nintendo, those early adopter price points. I don't know any parent that's going to rush out and just buy their kid a $1,500 headset and a $3,500 computer so they can maybe play video games on and be like, oh, this is so cool. My visuals are so awesome. They'll probably start them out with a $300 headset and say, here you go. But it's going to kind of be the next. It's going to be interesting to see how these things are going, especially how they have concerts and live streams. We have 2 nightclubs already in alt space. I just got off the WhatsApp call this morning with the UK and a company out there, and how they're building their nightclub platform and having multiple DJs sign up, and they built the whole back end so you can submit your mixes, submit your tracks, and put everything in there, and it runs through Sony and it runs through Facebook to make sure it's all taken care of. They've done a lot of legwork. So we're super excited to see these conversations happening about how are we going to consume music and entertainment in the future.
Right. So if we want to talk about just that, I think the opportunities are nearly limitless. And COVID kind of helped in the sense that we got used to watching live events on a computer screen and participating that way. So if we could be further immersed into a live music experience, just look at what Fortnite did with Marshmallow, and there's so many cool things that could happen with this technology. Where I get a little worried is where, again, humans being humans will do terrible things. If you've been reading in the news over the past 6 months, we've already had our first sexual assaults in the metaverse. It's like, oh, great. There's always these unintended consequences. When the internet came along, it was going to unite us all, and we were going to be able to share knowledge and information. And, we gave birth to the internet troll. Social media has done a lot of damage to society as a whole. And let's be honest. Both those the internet we would never do without. Social media, we would never do without again. I mean, they've become important parts of our lives. You know, as almost as important as electricity and water. But you know, there's sometimes I think the technology, and I'm not talking about the music technology. The music technology is a completely different thing because I can't see it being anything but benevolent and cool. It's all the other stuff that's being developed right now that could, you know, turn us into. Did you ever see the movie Idiocracy?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm worried about the Idiocracy. I really am. I think that was. If you haven't seen it, it's supposed to be a comedy, but it's kind of more of a documentary now.
Yeah, I can definitely, I can agree with you that it goes down that pathway. And could things become like that? How far in the future does he go? I can't remember. It's not that far.
It's like it was. I want to say 2030s or 2040s or something.
Yeah,
I don't remember, but yeah, not that far away.
And speaking of technology, though, it kind of moves fast in our industries, you know, or can move fast. Is there something you could think of that's not on the market today, but in your vision would be really amazing to be put out there? Something you could say, this would be awesome to see happen. What would that be?
Something completely brand new and never before seen.
Yeah.
That's not in the marketplace? That's a really good question. It's okay. There's a company called HAPB, HAPB as in Bob, double E, HAPB. And it is a brand new company that, how do I explain it? What they have done is they have measured the electromagnetic frequencies of various drugs. And they're starting with the benevolent, melatonin, caffeine, a little bit of cannabis, I think, that they're working on. And what they've done is they've recorded the electromagnetic frequencies of the molecules that make up these substances. And what they figured out how to do is broadcast those. Okay, when you take a pill, when you rub something on your skin, when you inhale something, when you smoke something, when you inject something, these chemicals go into your body and then end up in your brain, and those chemicals create certain electromagnetic interactions in the neurons in your brain, which is how we work. We're basically a giant battery. And if we introduce certain substances, chemicals into our brain, it influences how that battery works. Right? So when you take a melatonin and you want to go to sleep at night, what happens is this pill, which is a delivery mechanism, goes through your digestive system, into your bloodstream, into your brain, and hopefully that will make you fall asleep and have a deeper sleep. Well, what if you could take the molecules, the electromagnetic frequency of that molecule of melatonin, and just beam it directly into your head. Beam it right to the neurons that would be the receptors. So there's no delivery mechanism. It doesn't have to go through your gut. Doesn't have to go into your bloodstream. It just goes right to your brain. That's what this Happy company does. They've got this little thing. It looks like a deal that you put around your neck. You program it with your phone. It has what they call blends, and what these blends do is, give you the effect of a cup of coffee, help you focus on doing something, help you stimulate your creativity, help you wind down, help you commute, help you fall into a deep sleep, give you a pickup at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when everything is starting to slow down for you. And I'm trying one of these things out, and God damn it, it works. It works. Even my wife, who is dead against any of this sort of technology, I mean, if she could have a flip phone, she would. She has a hard time sleeping through the night, so I put this thing around her neck, and 9 hours later, I said, "Hi, sweetie, how did you sleep?" She goes, "I can't believe I slept through the night, 9 hours straight." So that's just an example of some sort of neural network. It's not an implant, but I think the direct stimulation of the brain is going to be a big thing. So It could be, you know, something that you wear on your head, like headphones. You've seen bone induction headphones, right? You know,
Yes, yeah.
which are pretty cool. Now imagine if we could just take that to a new level. There's a guy involved in this company. He has a son who's a singer-songwriter who is working in LA, and he has terrible stage fright. And, you know, he could benefit from a little bit of CBD to, you know, calm, you know, just sort of get in the zone, calm him down a little bit. But he is one of the 10% or so of people in the population who has a bad gastrointestinal reaction to any cannabinoids, right? Mm-hmm. So he can't, you know, take an oil. He can't take a hit off a joint. He can't do any of those things because he becomes violently ill. So he programmed this thing to give him a CBD calming effect, and he puts this thing on for an hour before he goes on stage. Not a problem. Everything's cool.
I'm actually looking at the website right now, going through it while you're talking about this, and so I'm curious. I see the device, but I see CBD as being added into this. Are you taking something while you're doing this?
No,
or is it just
no. Here's my phone. I go to the app.
Yeah.
Here's the app, and well, it's not gonna. I don't have my device here, so it's not gonna show up. But you know, I have all these different blends, like winter sleep, oh joy, family time, wind down, deep sleep, wake up, long flight, power nap, email mastery, morning coffee, afternoon slump, commute with ease, master your attention, creative boost, deep work, happy hour, zen companion, chill out your senses, strain relief, time to lounge, New Year's Eve party. I mean, I can beam all those blends into my head, and I get I get a different effect. The guy that discovered this was trying to do some mapping of some alcohol molecules, and for whatever reason, he had some rum, and it got swept up in this whole thing. And he's working on this, and he's going, "I'm looped. Like, how could I be drunk when I haven't had anything to drink?" And it turns out that this thing was beaming the alcohol effect into his brain, and he was getting wasted.
What?
So you can just imagine how this works, right? I mean, you can use it for, you know, in the music space, I would like to go to a rave, but I'm not taking any bad ecstasy. I'll just call it up on my phone. Or, hey, I wonder what it feels like to take heroin. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be abused with this. Again, and it's not you're going to have to get the FDA to approve it, and a whole bunch of other things. But what if you could use this for benevolent reasons too? Like if you, for example, suffer from chronic pain. You know, you don't want to be taking Oxy all your life. What if this thing could beam some painkillers into your head without having any of the adverse effects?
Yeah.
Or the addiction problems, or the overdose problems, or any of those things. So there you go. That's my tech tip for the week.
There you go. I'm going to look into this. This is awesome.
And I swear to God, it works. I swear to God, it works. And I thought, I call bullshit on this. There's no way this is going to work. But I tested it. If it works on my wife, it works.
All right. And then I see you get 2 blends of your choice included with the base membership.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a full access to the catalog with an all access membership.
Yes.
$20 a month for the all access membership, but the base membership you just get 2 blends.
Yes.
I can include. Okay, cool. I'm gonna look into this. This looks awesome. I've been talking with my girlfriend as of late and just pushing all the hours, and I deal with people all over the world at all different times. So I'm up, could be up at 5 a.m. and be up at till 11 o'clock doing interviews and doing things like what I do.
Oh yeah.
All hours a day. It'd be nice to have somebody just
trust me. Give it a shot.
Check it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ellen, one couple last questions here. Do you yourself play any music instruments, or are you a musician of any sort?
Yeah. I've been playing drums since the early 80s, late 70s, actually. Yes, drums. I was a drum teacher for a while too. Yeah.
What was your thought? I remember when I first saw them. What was your thought on the V drums, the Roland V drums, when they first came out?
I thought that I was a purist. Drums are meant to be acoustic. Nothing but acoustic. I mean, I remember I'm old enough to remember when drum machines came out with companies like Lynn, and it was, oh God, the Roland TR-808. No, this is garbage. You're gonna put drummers out of work. Now I see that everything it's a tool. I had some electronic pads, and they were real old school new wave sounding sort of things, like the ping, those kinds. And big deal, so what? But now I've got, you can't see it, but over here I've got an electronic Roland kit that I play, and I have headphones on, and that way I don't disturb the dogs.
Yeah, I thought it was just awesome because you could then put almost whatever sounds you want in there.
Yeah,
to control what you want. I thought that would be. It always reminded me of that scene out of the movie Virtuosity, when Russell Crowe's in the nightclub and he's kind of putting his hands over the different things. It's making it sound like you kind of do that with drums. I'm not a drummer. I'm not a musician by any means, but just always, I thought those were a really cool thing, and maybe seeing where the future of music goes, where we'll be able to create music by motion. I was years ago at a Fleetwood Mac show, and Mick gets up from behind the stage, from behind his kit, and they were doing something behind the stage. I didn't know what was going on, but it turns out they were putting him in this whole outfit, and he jumps out from behind and he starts playing the drums all over his body and dancing on stage. Not Mick. Wait, what's the drummer's name? Drummer's name is Mick.
Mick Fleetwood, yeah.
Okay. Gosh, I grew up listening to Fleetwood Mac. I should know this. It was just so insane to see that happening, and how music can be transformed by technology and what new things will come.
I've seen gloves or fingertip things where you can just actually play in the air. There's so many things that can be done. So many things.
Any tips or tricks that you can give to people that want to get into the industry? Something that would be a kind of number 1, number 2 rule to look out for or do if they want to get into.
What industry are we talking about?
I'm sorry, into whether it's broadcast media industry in any way, shape, or form.
Network. Find people that you think can help you, and maybe you can help them. Network. It's a people business. It's a relationship business. And the more people you meet, you'd be surprised. Even if it's just a stupid, like you just dropped me an email one day, right? And I responded. So it's really easy. If you send out 50 emails and you get 10 responses, you've got 10 people to network with. Just do it. It costs nothing. And the worst that can happen is somebody can read your email and delete it. The best thing that can happen is people go, okay, I'm willing to help this person. Let's set up a time.
Absolutely. And so thank you for that insight. And where can people, find out more information about you, what you got going on?
Well, I do. I have my website. It's called ajournalofmusicalthings.com. I update it every day with music news and information and recommendations. Every day. I haven't missed a day in 12 years. If you want to know what's going on and just sort of, my take on on everything from music and music technology and trends and social media, go there. See what you think. ajournalofmusicalthings.com. I'm
looking at it right now on my monitor. Definitely awesome. And thank you so much, Alan, for coming and talking with us today on the DJ Sessions. We might follow up with you here in the near future and just kind of see where our journey of musical things is going. Do it. And if your people at Mackie have a new recording console, I could use one. My old one is coming to the end of its life in my studio. I don't know if I can don't worry. What I have an NDA with them. I think I know it's coming out, but yeah, Mackie's been a great sponsor to us. We love them. They're in our backyard and they really support what we do. And if you ever get a chance, check out the mobile sessions on our website and see what we do with some of their gear. Done. It's kind of a spectacle and kind of a one of a kind thing that's done. But Alan, thank you so much for coming on the DJ Sessions today. You're very welcome. Awesome. On that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on TikTok, find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, The DJ Sessions. You'll find us everywhere. Just go to the website, thedjsessions.com. This is Darren coming to you from the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington, and Alan all the way out in Oakville, Ontario for the DJ Sessions presents the virtual sessions. And remember, on the DJ Sessions, the music never stops.